Hello, and welcome to Tallinna Sadam Investor Conference webinar about financial results in the second quarter and the first 6 months of 2018. Today we are hosted by the Chairman of the Management Board, Valdo Kalm, and the Chief Financial Officer, Marko Raid. All questions will be answered after the presentation. However, you can send in questions during the presentation by using the question box on the right side of the screen. Valdo and Marko, you may start the presentation.
Yes, all right. Then, good morning, everybody. My name is Valdo Kalm, in charge or CEO of Port of Tallinn, and Marko Raid, our CFO, is also involved. And I would like then start immediately Q2 and 6-month results. I hope you see the presentation. Yeah, is it correct?
Yes, we see the presentation. Everything is fine.
Great. Thank you. Then to start with main achievements on our main actions in Q2, and of course we listed our shares in Q2, but more important to the business agreement for oilseeds processing and logistic complex in Muuga Harbour. That's actually will be quite a huge investment from the operator side, and preparing for that already is ongoing during the summer, and all the contracts are signed. That means we already getting some rental fees starting from June. Then we also signed more with Tallinn city government for the master plan development, and that's extremely important to go on with detailed planning for this area. And then we succeeded to have an agreement for our Botnica offshore business, and Botnica is already fulfilled first stage in Canada very successfully. Therefore, Botnica is doing well. Also, we saw in Q2 some good developments on liquid volumes. We see clear stabilization, even tiny growth, and therefore all the cargo volumes show the growth. And then we started with the construction of the terminal in Q2. Our main messages for results, that's the next slide, or developments in Q2 are that we have a growth in cargo and in passenger volumes. We see a stable EBITDA development. In Q2 there is even small growth, and of course you probably noticed the decline in profits due to the impact of income tax cost from this record dividend. But we still standing behind our dividend policy. We are a little bit ahead from our plans in 6 months, and therefore we are very committed to the dividend policy, what is fixed. And then there is new client in Muuga, HHLA from Germany, who acquired the transit Keskus, big container terminal. Then main trends in segments. Sorry. In passenger business, we saw growth, still supported by Stockholm line and cruising business, although there is almost 1% decline in Tallinn-Helsinki route, and that's mainly due to the we see certain changes in behavior of Finnish travelers. Economy booming quite well in Finland. Therefore, they have possibilities to travel to the other destinations, and of course, a little bit our tax regime changed here in Estonia. But the growth is still there in total number, and as I mentioned, cruising business doing very well. On cargo, stable liquid bulk volumes and growth in overall, but we see also due to the heavy competition certain decline in revenue per ton due to the competition. In ferry business, there is increase of passenger numbers, and we also got the order to add one summer ferry to the line, but what gives us definitely some new revenue and also profits or EBITDA. And then I already mentioned Botnica got summer job, and the bigger impact from that will be in Q3. Very briefly about the different cargos. As we mentioned, we have the growth in Q2 and in 6 months, and then that's positive because we see definitely this year as a stabilization year for the cargo volumes, and growth comes from liquid bulk, ro-ro, and containers. There are some decline in dry bulk due to that last year we had some special projects with sugar and extra good grain year, but yeah, the growth is there. On passenger side, as I mentioned, we have also tiny growth in quarterly basis in 6 months, and the growth comes from Stockholm and cruise, and there is a tiny decline from Helsinki. Now I would like to give to Marko with the financials.
Thank you, Valdo. About the financial results of the group on the second quarter and first 6 months. To start with, maybe the main message from our side is that the second quarter has been more stronger than the first one, which can be seen also from the more positive results of the second quarter, where all of the main items are showing positive growth compared to 6 months, where we still have a small drop in EBITDA. And overall, we do believe that this trend is to continue, so the third quarter will be better year on year than was the third quarter last year. So we expect to have a positive outlook going forward. So on the revenue side, we have seen 3.4% growth in the second quarter, and also 3.6% growth in EBITDA. The decline in the 6 month of EBITDA was due to one-off penalty income that we received in 2017 first quarter, and this was due to the delay in the delivery of the new ferries, and we got one-off penalty income from the shipyards. Otherwise, the operating profit has increased in Q2, but also on the 6 month level, we have about 2 million of decrease, partly due to the same one-off penalty income, but also partly due to the increase of depreciation charge from the same delivery of those new ferries, which now have been amortized for the whole 6 months compared to only second quarter in 2017. As Valdo said, we have had quite an increase, more than double the cost of an income tax. This is due to the extraordinary dividend of 105 million being paid out this year compared to the 48 million that was paid last year. So we have quite an increase on the income tax cost, which then has affected the profit for the period, and also is the reason behind the net loss for the first quarter, and this we expect to change now in the third quarter. Investments have decreased, as we also promised in the prospectus, because the ferry investments are now behind. So the 6 month 2018 we have had 1.2 million of investments compared to 24.5 from the year before, and that's largely due to the investment in the new ferries. On the next slide we have laid out the cash flow and our financial position. As already said, cash from operating activities is very good and stable. There's a even 10.9 million increase, but this is largely due to one item, which is 8.7 million tax cost, which we had in 2016 dividend. But as the dividend was paid in December 2016, that cost was actually paid out in the January of 2017, and in 2018 we still not have any income tax payments from the dividends. So this one item is largely behind this 10.9 million increase. Cash used in investing activities has also grown due to the decrease in investments, and from those two items the free cash flow has increased by about 20 million euros. Cash from financing activities is also positive due to the proceeds from the IPO, which were 122 million, and as of the end of 6 months we have paid out 85 million dividends. So the difference of those two is mainly what makes up this 29 million. And we still have 20 million euros of dividends to pay to the government from this 105, and this will be paid out at the end of this year. So the net cash flow has increased by considerably by about 55 million euros. But as I said, we still have some payments to make from this. On the balance sheet side, maybe only thing to comment on the right hand side is the debt position. We have a little bit increased our debt position by 8 million euros, and outstanding debt at the end of 6 months was 228 million euros, and we a little bit have increased the position in current assets, which mainly consists of cash in amount of 68 million euros. And on the last slide we have outlined the results by segments. Revenue wise, it's been quite stable, both in passenger harbors and cargo harbors. As I said, second quarter being a little bit more positive than the first quarter, but the bigger change comes from the ferry segment, which is the domestic ferry operation, where we have had about 1 million revenue increase due to the additional revenue from the summertime vessel, which was introduced for the summer peak time, and also a little bit the number of trips for the other vessels has increased as well. On EBITDA side, the changes are a bit bigger. On the ferry, the second quarter has been very positive. We have increased EBITDA by 2.5 million, mainly due to the increase in revenues, but also because we do not have the cost of the substitute vessels, which in 2017 we had until the end of the third quarter. So this gives us also some cost savings has given for the second quarter and will also continue into the third quarter. On the passenger harbors and cargo harbor segments, even though the EBITDA, the revenue has been quite stable, there's been a small decline in EBITDA, and that's due to few factors. In the passenger harbor segment, we have had one-off costs with the startup of SmartPort system in the passenger harbors, namely in the D terminal areas, but also this year we will have slightly higher cost for the maintenance and repair of our non-current assets, and that has impacted both the passenger harbor and cargo harbor segment. But otherwise, as Valdo said, we are optimistic on the outlook. We are confident on the dividend policy and do not see at the moment any problems with keeping the promises made in the dividend policy. And with this, we will conclude our comments on the results and are happy to take any questions that you may have, and we'll probably have a short break as well because you need to write the questions, so we'll give a little bit time for that.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. Now Mario will proceed with the questions in the order they were received. I would like to remind you that you can send in questions using the question box on the right side of the screen.
Thank you for the questions, and I would like to start with some questions about the master plan that we got. And there is a question about what is the purpose of the mall between city government, and is the design made by Zaha Hadid not used as a basic for the future development? If it still is, which questions will be solved by the joint mall? And very briefly to answer to that, the answer is that this mall gives us confidence to move on with detailed planning. That's very important because we split the whole 16 area to the 7 plots, and we already started with all the 7 detailed plannings, and it gives us such a good cooperation with the city to really focus on this detailed planning to the details, and this more basis on Zaha Hadid master plan work. There is no change on that. Then another question about master plan is what kind of additional opportunities does the detailed planning process involve? The construction volumes, number of the floors, parking places, etc. Could these aspects still be changed, and to what extent? Yes, exactly. These are the questions what we have to solve during the detailed planning. And of course, we can change these during the detailed planning. Therefore, that's exactly the process of detailed planning. And then the third question about the smart board application. Is the automatic check-in and traffic management system smart board developed from the scratch, or is the technology and combined from different components? If it is just newly developed, is the port planning to get involved in the technology sector and sell it as an application or solution for the other ports? And the answer is that's the new development from the scratch. We own the code, we own this smart port application, and honestly saying, there are certain interest from Norwegians to have the same application, and there is no decision yet. Are we ready, and do we have enough resources to sell it abroad? But there is possibility to do that. Please, Marko.
Yes, so the next question we have received is about the outlook for the dividend payment, and is it likely that it might be higher than 30 million in the coming 2 years or not? So with this regard, the dividend policy says that it's a minimum 30 million, and depending on the outcome of the yearly results, it can also be higher than 30 million in the coming 2 years. So no promises, but yes, the answer is it may be higher than 30 million. Then another question about the adjusted EBITDA. What these or are the adjustments? So the main reason why we are using adjusted EBITDA is that we also exclude from EBITDA any impairment or write-off in the assets if there is a value decrease, which is a non-monetary item, which does not fall under depreciation or amortization. So we also exclude any write-downs in the value of assets as well from that figure. That's the adjustment mainly.
Do you expect, next question, quarterly decrease in passenger numbers on Helsinki-Tallinn route? And to increase even further this year? And what about your estimates for 2019? For this year, as a port, we see quite a heavy competition between the operators, and therefore we saw in the beginning of this quarter certain improvement, and therefore it's quite difficult to say what will happen, because it's really all about the campaigns and competition between the operators. Therefore, I guess we will have a little bit better outlook for the end of the year, but it's really difficult to estimate next year.
As a general remark, we do not expect that growth will continue as it has been in the previous years. So it likely will be lower growth and maybe around, even as this year, some 0 to 1%. But we'll see. Then there's a question about the oilseeds factory. When will it start to contribute to rental income? And this will happen from the third quarter this year. as the building title agreement was signed at the end of second quarter, so will have impact for the starting from the beginning of third quarter.
Next question. What? Yes, Leah, you're welcome.
Have you answered all the questions?
Not yet.
No, we
Okay.
have two more.
Two more. What are your expectations for the liquid bulk volume growth for the year after one negative quarter and one positive quarter? Do you expect dry bulk to decline in volumes for the year? Do you expect average income per ton of cargo to drop further in the future? First question. We see quite let's put it on a positive trend on liquid bulk by the end of the year. On dry bulk, I guess there will be a further decline due to that there is quite a bad grain year, and that means that the dry bulk will continue to decline. And about the average income per ton will also be under the pressure, of course, due to the competition, but I guess that will stabilize by the end of the year.
I believe all the questions have been answered.
Yes.
Yes, so this is the end of the webinar. The presentation will be available on the Nasdaq Baltic YouTube channel on webinar playlist. Thank you, Marko and Valdo, for the presentation and for the answers. And thank you, participants, for joining.